This is Beach Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Mean Gene. Mean Gene. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, and the atomic attack alarm.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to Beach Talk Radio. This is episode number 168. We're coming to you live from Peach Timeout on Fort Myers Beach. A really big show for you today as we focus in on the two biggest topics facing the beach, public safety and water quality. It was certainly an interesting week for both of those. And before we get to our first guest, a reminder to stay with us at the end of the show. We have 2 tickets to give away to the Beach Theater, and we'll give you all the details about why we're inside, and it has nothing to do with what you are thinking. First, we'd like to thank these great beach businesses who've been all with us for a very long time and continue to support the show and the newsletter. And we start with Island Oils and Fort Myers Tiki Tours and Nervous Nellies and Margaritas and State Insurance USA, Sun Palace Vacations, La Ola Restaurant, Tuckaway Cafe, Blue Ribbon Events, Beach Pottery, Shuckers, and our longest running sponsor of all time, Beach Time Out. A few things you may or may not know. A video of every past episode is available on both Facebook and YouTube. If you're not a Facebook fan, you can follow us on YouTube so that you get notified every time a new video comes up. We also clip some of the interviews on YouTube and post them up there, like both interviews that we had from last week. We cut from the episode and we posted them individually if you'd like to watch those. The show is also in audio format. You can find audio of every episode at beachtalkradio.com. Or if you use the iHeartRadio app or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, all of the shows are on all of those apps. And you can subscribe to our twice weekly newsletter by heading over to beachtalkradio.news.com, where you can also get information on how to receive breaking news from the beach, which happened a couple of times this past week. It comes right to your phone. It's a push notification. All you need to do is download the app. All right, now let's start off with our first guest. It was a busy week for public safety. First, I guess I would like to introduce my trusty sidekick here, and that's Kim. Ryan is the co-host of the show, so welcome to the show, wife. It's nice to have you back.
Wow, are you going to let us get a word in edgewise with that long intro?
And Jim Nickel, who is a 40-year police veteran from Ohio who retired and moved to Fort Myers Beach. And really not retired now. You were explaining to us exactly what you do here on the beach. It's many more things than I think you might have expected to do, or maybe that your wife expected you to do.
Probably so, Ed. I retired in 2011. We started coming down here as snowbirds, like lots of people do. We ended up moving here in 2015. And pretty soon after that, I decided, this is now my community and I'd like to be involved. So I got on the board of my condominium association, Estero Cove, down across from the Wyndham Garden Inn. Next thing you know, they said, well, you have experience. Why don't you be president? And I've been president there since 2018. In addition, I got appointed by town council to be a member of the public safety committee. I applied for that because I have public safety background. And I wanted to contribute to the community. And then I ran for I was appointed to the fire commission in July of last year. And then I ran for the position on the fire commission and was elected in November to be a fire commissioner for the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District. And I did want to take a moment while I'm here to say thank you very much for your kind words during that time period, as well as thank you to the voters that supported me during that election. I didn't have a chance to come up and say thank you right afterwards, and I do appreciate the opportunity to say that.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that very much. So, Jim, when you were in Ohio, kind of run us through what it is that you did up there for the police department.
Well, I started out, like everyone does at the bottom. I was a police cadet. I started in 1970, but when I retired, I was a police lieutenant. I was fourth in command of a department of about 85 sworn officers, a total of about 130 personnel in the agency. Kettering is a town, it's a suburb of Dayton, and it had about 60,000 people, about 19 square miles. So it was a kind of, I guess, what they would classify a mid-size police department. And in the course of my career, I had the opportunity to be in command of practically every department or division within the department, including criminal investigations. I was in command of the 911 center. I was in command of the administrative management section where you have to do the budget and all that wonderful stuff. I served as public information officer there for a couple of years. And then my last job, I was a watch commander in charge of the day watch, which is what old guys get to do. They get to work days. So anyhow, I was the watch commander there for about the last 7 years before I retired.
So, Jim, what is your opinion on what went wrong on Fort Myers Beach on Memorial Day?
Well, what went wrong for the beach is that the incident happened at all, because people don't fully appreciate or understand that these kind of incidents can occur just about anywhere. There was an interesting paper that was published in 1967 by the Johnson administration, by the Attorney General, called "The Challenge of Crime in a Free Society." And some of the conclusions they reached there was, you can't stop crime in a free society. It can happen. It can happen anywhere. What you can do, though, is create a situation or a culture where it's less likely to happen. You can have a robust response by law enforcement when it does happen. You can have a professional investigation that will hopefully result in identifying perpetrators and bringing them to justice. Now, that paper went on and covered every aspect of the criminal justice system, from the police to the courts to corrections. But in the portion about law enforcement, it was interesting. And at the time, I was just starting in law enforcement. So they talked about this particular paper and its impact and what it said. So I kind of remember it because it was in the academy.
Do you think that it seemed like the response to this event was relatively large and quick?
It was actually overwhelming. I was flabbergasted at how effectively the sheriff's office responded to this particular incident. And I talked with Captain Layler up there a little bit about it this week, and he said, well, it's because we were there. He said we had many, many deputies on the beach that day, and they were everywhere, as well as in the general vicinity of Fort Myers Beach. And so when this incident occurred, they were there within probably a minute or so, and they started to secure the area. But again, like I said before, there's no way that in a free society that you can create a situation where you're 100% certain crime is not going to happen. And this was an incident. It seemed to me it was like a spur of the moment decision on the part of this kid to do what he did, and I'm sure he's going to regret it the rest of his life. Mr. Craig, I think is his name. He's in custody up in Alabama, and that reason why I think he's in custody so quickly is because the Lee County Sheriff's Office, they put a lot of resources into solving this crime. They realized how important it is to have a safe beach and for there to be a perception that there's a safe beach. And I think there is. You know, the last time I was here, Ed, you asked me if I felt safe walking around down here at night or walking the beach. And I said I did. And you agreed with me. You said, I do too. And I still do. This incident aside, this was just while you can anticipate a lot of kids being here and a lot of rowdier behavior on certain dates, it doesn't necessarily translate into crime. And there's a difference, I think, and people don't fully appreciate it. Law enforcement really cannot enforce what I would say are
Codes of behavior.
Norms. It just can't. It can't do anything about offensive behavior unless it ekes into the realm of crime. Now, there's lots that can be done, I think, and I'd like to share at least my thoughts on that. As a member of the Public Safety Committee,
can we before you get into that, I want to just something. One of the things that you said in your answer, I want to just before we jump ahead. You said the response was overwhelming, and it clearly was. I mean, the sheriff's department they were everywhere. People were sending videos from everywhere. You can see them that they had the beach cleared off. They had the yellow tape around the area looking for whatever they were looking for evidence. How does somebody get off the beach when the sheriff's department responded within a minute or two? How does that happen?
Well, people scattered. When that incident occurred, people scattered, including the suspect. And it's hard to determine which person's running for their life and which person's running from the police. You really can't do it. And he managed to get away before the police were able to secure the area. And, you know, I noticed I didn't see them detaining a lot of people, and that typically wouldn't be the case in an investigation like this anyhow. It really wouldn't suit their purposes well. What's better is to be able to get in there and talk to people and find out if they know who this guy is.
Yeah.
And kind of work the investigation, which is exactly, I believe, what they did.
And there were so many phone videos of
absolutely.
the suspect who looked like he was afraid that that little gun was going to recoil in some way to hurt him. You look at the kid, and I know he definitely needs to suffer the consequences of his actions, but you look at the kid and he looks from a couple of pictures like, holy crap, how could somebody that young be so dumb and commit something that might send him to jail for years? It's such a waste.
Yes. You have to ask yourself these questions. You know, the first question in my mind when I saw the whole thing, my God, what was he thinking?
Yeah.
What was he thinking?
Yeah.
But, you know, these things do happen, and we have to be prepared to deal with them when they do.
Are there things going on? The reputation, I know Fort Myers Beach, the folks that run the beach want to try and clean up the reputation of some of the things that go on. The spring break activities get a little bit out of hand. The other video that we all saw with the kids acting the way they were acting like it was spring break, and the boxing matches and the girls that to me look like they're being sexually abused on Memorial Day. That's not a reputation that Fort Myers Beach wants. How do you start to change things along the beach so that when Margaritaville comes in and you're slowly trying to weed those things out, is it even possible? Again, it's not possible to control everything, but I think it's possible to make an impact. And I think what could happen is law enforcement and the municipal government could work closely with the business associations here to try and get some kind of a play page. So we're working off of the same play page and have good communication on these dates, so that if an incident, you get a crowd of kids and they're all having a great time, but they're getting a little loud and disorderly, an owner of a business who can see that happening could notify the sheriff's office. You know, I got a pretty good crowd of kids down here that are getting kind of rowdy. Maybe a couple officers walk by. But right now, I don't think that kind of communication is happening on a regular basis. And it's like, well, who's to say what's rowdy and what's not? So I think if the businesses and the sheriff's office and the town representatives could get together and talk about this and kind of create some sort of standards of conduct. This is not criminal conduct. This is just behavior. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when does it cross over into becoming criminal conduct? Well, obviously, if it gets into a fight or it gets so disorderly that the officer feels like it's creating a threat to others, or if the owner of the property, and you know, the owners have some influence over the beach area directly behind their businesses. If the owner of the property says that behavior is unacceptable and I don't want that to happen on my property, make it stop. Then the deputies can go down and say the owner has asked you to cease and desist, and if you don't, he's going to trespass you off of his property. Right, because the property, they own the property to the high tide line.
Yes.
And so now they're not all allowed to sell out.
That's not 100%, but it's
right.
Yeah.
It's
generally accepted.
And they're not allowed to sell alcohol. Some are, but they're not allowed to sell. Most of them are not allowed to sell alcohol out on the beach. And the rule is you're not allowed to bring alcohol on the beach.
So that gets me to my question, or whatever, is what about, you know, a preemptive kind of approach where there's more patrols on the beach? Because I have been to many beaches on this coast where there are police of some sort or authorities of some sort riding on four-wheelers or walking, making sure that you're cool, you know, you don't have open container.
Right. I think these are issues that can be worked out with the LCSO and the town. On this particular day, they did have deputies on the beach. Some were walking, some were riding the ATV vehicle back and forth. But you got to realize they're patrolling from up beyond Times Square here, all the way down past where this incident occurred. And so they can't be everywhere all at once. What makes what makes a place work is cooperation. So that if it's like that, if you see something, say something. I'm sure you've heard that. Well, I think that's what we have to do is foster that kind of attitude with the business community out here. And it's in their best interest to kind of keep an eye on what's going on behind their businesses and then get on the phone, or who knows, if they worked out a deal, they could have radios that would communicate, work with the townspeople. We have Beach Patrol and work with those folks as well as LCSO to provide some kind of a presence on the beach where people would think, if I get too rowdy, I'm probably going to get in trouble. And they don't know what kind of trouble, but they figure they're going to get in trouble. So they kind of keep it under control. Some kids are not going to keep it under control.
Right,
they've been
absolutely.
drinking. They're not thinking.
Right.
And that's when the sheriff's office is going to have to eventually deal with them, or something like this crazy incident will happen.
They also, there's the horseback they could be on, right? I believe Lee County, do they have horses?
I don't know the answer. They have just about everything else. They have planes and helicopters.
I
and
mean,
I
boats.
can't
yeah.
see that.
On the beach?
Yeah, no.
I can see
I
that.
can see four-wheelers,
Yeah,
bikes,
The ATV
walking.
thing works
Yeah.
pretty effectively.
Yeah.
They can get
and,
around.
and to your point, I mean, I get it is a big beach in totality.
It's a
but
small
the
area of
small,
trouble.
There
know
are
where the trouble's
isolated
happening.
areas of trouble which may require additional watching out for.
Right. Well, these areas are fluid. They move around. I mean, typically they've been behind one particular business, but this business, I think, went out of its way
Well-
on this particular holiday. They hired extra deputies to be right there in
Right.
the vicinity of their business. And the way Lee County handles that is those deputies really work for the county. They're hired and paid for by the individual, but they're out there in uniform and they can go anywhere and do anything.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to not do something.
Right. So they put some extra personnel out there, and because of that, probably the incident occurred somewhere else because they
Right.
probably saw those deputies hanging around up there.
Now what was I going to say now? I interrupted you before, so I wanted you to get back to your point. What you were going to say before I
Well, now
stopped
you
you.
have to get me to come back to
No,
that point.
I think you were going to list off some of the things that could be put in place to sort of
Sure, and
mitigate all of this.
that's I think it all boils down to a good communication. And I think if we one of the things that the town I think is investigating is adding a couple of community policing officers to the beach. They have a rather robust program of this down in Bonita Springs, and it's working very effectively for them. They're a lot bigger. They have a lot more money to spend. Here's the issue we have. Bonita Springs is about 65,000 people, and they don't get the huge influx of people like we do to the beach. So we're 7,000 people trying to provide infrastructure for 1 million, because we have about 1 million people a year pop over that bridge to come down and enjoy our beaches. And we're glad to see them. But it's kind of hard for the 7,000 people, the residents that live here, to support everything that's required for that. So we do get a lot of backing and support from the county, as we should. And I think that has to continue. I think in the long run, I think we have to work as partners with the county to provide security as well as infrastructure to support this beach.
One of the things that is being discussed is the community policing aspect of adding 2 deputies to Fort Myers Beach, where for $112,000 a year each, they are assigned to Fort Myers Beach. The same 2 get to know who the community is, who lives in the community. They're the same 2 faces that learn the side streets, and they become not really their own police department, but they become the 2 deputies that are here all the time. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's probably a pretty good idea. The Public Safety Committee is looking into that to provide some recommendations to council. There's a lot of, because of this incident and previous incidents, there is a lot of interest, I think, on the part of town council to look into an item like that. And it wouldn't surprise me that if over the summer we don't eventually get a chance to talk about this at great length and some decisions are made in that regard. Personally, as an individual, I think it would be advantageous for us to do that. Why? Because these guys are going to be able to do just what I was talking about. They'll be able to work with these businesses and work with the town and try to pull together that kind of cohesive way of managing these holidays on the beach. so that the beach remains safe and people feel comfortable out there. Because again, a lot of what's going on out there is not crime. It's just rowdy behavior that makes a family feel uncomfortable, but it's not illegal. So we would like to see this be a nice family-friendly beach, and I think they could work together, and a community policing officers would have the time to do that. Plus, they could address quality of life issues like electric bikes on the sidewalks, speeding up and down our wonderful new road out here, and where people can get run over and hurt.
Is the boxing on the beach that we saw in the video, is that a crime?
Well, my first question was, gosh, I wonder if they had an event permit.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
They probably did. I think that could qualify as an event.
Yeah.
If that was scheduled and staged and
I can't see the town approving a permit for kids boxing on the beach,
No.
but maybe you're right.
I don't think they would.
No.
So because I'm not sure that that's in the best interest of the town to do that. So yeah, I think that was probably out of line, and I think the deputies could have asked them if they had a permit. And if they don't have a permit, they could tell them they're going to have to stop that behavior.
Right. So back to the community policing. One more thing. The counter argument to that is that the community isn't causing the crime. It's the people that come from outside Fort Myers Beach and bring, the riffraff over here. So the community policing, although it would help, it's not really the problem. The problem is the riffraff coming from out of town.
Yeah, but providing 2 additional officers with the experience to work with business owners and to work with the community as a whole and crime prevention places, they can set up crime prevention areas in neighborhoods, as well as they can be responsive to criminal things. Like, we had a huge problem with bike thefts over the
saw that
winter.
Yeah,
and actually Lee County Sheriff got all over that. I talked with the detective section there several times because I happened to stumble into one of the bike thieves and got a picture of him. So as luck would have it. So ultimately, they worked that case pretty well, and they spent a lot of time and resources on it. But I think that's the kind of thing where a community policing officers could work with residents to try to target harden, so that you're not as vulnerable, as well as work with, as well as your neighborhood watch groups and get people talking and working. So there's some validity to what you say, but I think this is the answer to get people down here full time that know the beach and know the people on the beach and can work with us to try and resolve and back to what I first said, create an environment that is less likely to result in criminal conduct.
Now he put up on the page about kind of a poll about people's feelings about getting a local police department. What are your, it was pretty, to me, it seemed like a variety of responses that was not something people were interested in. What do you think about the effectiveness of that? Or
I probably wouldn't be someone out there beating the drum to do that. I'll tell you, when I first came here, I was very disappointed that Fort Myers Beach didn't have its own police department, and I didn't fully understand it. After living here for a while, I get it. And the reason is because we only have 7,000 people trying to support that infrastructure. And it's different than the fire department. See, the fire department is a special district. You're not allowed to have special districts in Florida to support law enforcement. So law enforcement can only really come from 2 sources, municipal or county. So then I realized that the county sheriff's office here is exceedingly professional and very dedicated to keeping the beach safe. They're an accredited agency. I don't know if you know anything about law enforcement accreditation. There are 18,000 police agencies in the country, and only about 1,100 of them are accredited or in the accreditation process. Unbelievably, we have 3 right in this area. Lee County Sheriff's Office, Cape Coral PD, and Fort Myers PD, although they went through a little hiccup with theirs, but they're back, accredited. What is accreditation? There's about 500 standards that agency has to have in place in order to operate, and they have to implement them. I mean, they send assessors down here. They ride around with the officers or deputies. They make sure that you're not only saying I'm doing it, they make sure that you are doing it. So what's the impact of that? You end up with a very professional and well-managed police agency. well, you're not going to keep your accreditation. I
You,
mean,
you
it's
didn't
very
mention
simple.
Sanibel. Are they not accredited?
You know, I don't know the answer.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't check that. They
Okay.
might well be.
All right.
I didn't check that. I just checked it. I just checked with the three right here that we deal with.
So the other thing that wasn't mentioned as we were throwing around ideas was something that kind of comes up once in a while. We had this community center over here before the Margaritaville fences, which I don't know if you've driven down, folks, that fences are going up.
Mhm.
So the work is starting. What about a substation, even if it's part-time during the times where it's really needed?
That's really a decision for the sheriff's office to make, whether they want to invest in that and what cooperation they might get. I think we would like to see it. We would like to see it, I think, as a citizen, where you drive down the street and there's a building and it says Lee County Sheriff's Office, and people would think, well, hey, they're here. It's really just, you might as well put up a billboard sign. I mean, right now he had the building over here, and that served that exact purpose. And so I get it. I mean, I understand the value of that, and it's also helpful for the deputies to have a place to go that they can feel safe and secure to take a break, write their reports, and what they have things they have to do to get it. When they have to get out of the car.
So just so everybody knows, we did do a Freedom of Information request and realized that or found out that there were extra deputies that the town requested, and I think they got like 3 or 4 on the Monday, especially on the Monday, where they were staggered, so their shifts were 8 hours and they were kind of staggered along the way. And that was in addition to Sheriff Marcino's deputies that were here. He didn't say exactly how many, and you never really know how many, and you probably should know how many because not all of them have uniforms on.
Right.
But you also know how close they were if they weren't here because they were here quickly. So
when I spoke to them about that this week, for operational reasons, they don't like to give out the exact number of people because, again, a bad guy could come down here and count them out and say, aha, I've got them all identified. Now I can go over here and do something. They would prefer not really telling you exact numbers, and I get that. That's an operational issue, and I applaud them for protecting that, really.
So in a few weeks is going to be the 4th of July. What do you think we'll see?
I think you'll have a high visibility of officers on the beach because I don't think they would they don't want a repeat of this.
No.
And I think they're going to be doing everything they can to create that situation where it's not likely that crime is going to occur on the beach. That's all you can do and hope that people behave when they get down here. And I think eventually I'm hoping we can get our business owners talking, working together, kind of off the same play page to ultimately communicate quickly and frequently with the police so that if there's issues building around their businesses or that they can see from their businesses,
You'll let everybody know.
They can call them and let's get some uniforms down that way to just let the folks know.
Just have a presence.
We're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they're coming your way. And I know that there was, other things that were going on where there were fights that it just seemed like there was a group of people causing trouble. Not the same group, I think, that resulted in the gunshots, but there was other things going on.
I'll tell you
such a sad thing on Memorial Day, which should be known for something else.
A very short story back when I was working in Kettering, the school was having a problem at the football games with kids just being rowdy, running around and acting crazy, scaring the heck out of the adults, really. And so they decided to hire the Kettering Police Department to come in and work instead of private security. But they didn't really make a public view of that. They just did it. So one day we showed up instead of the private security guys, and the kids thought we were all private security, and they didn't really have a lot of respect for those guys, and they just kind of ignored them. And the first time they did that with us, they were going off in a paddy wagon.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, it's the real police.
Yeah.
It made a difference. And after that, there was never any trouble at the football games anymore because they knew the real police were around.
Jim,
and it's the same thing here on the beach.
We're seeing the result of, I think, the defund the police malarkey in different cities around the country where crime is starting to go up. I don't know if that's a result of the police officers backing off because they feel like they're getting a bum rap on the whole thing, and they are. What are your thoughts on where that's head now after a little while? It's been over a year now since
Well, I think it was an unfortunate use of language. Frankly, I think what people were really trying to say is we need to reform the police,
Mhm.
and I really think that's what people would like to see is some attempt to improve the quality of law enforcement, and it's so essential to get good people on the force to start with. It's who you hire is really, really important. We used to call it, you can either hire a helper or an enforcer. We always hired helpers because I can teach you to be an enforcer. But if you're an enforcer by nature, I can't hardly teach you to have any empathy or sympathy. It's just not going to happen. So you try to hire people whose their motivation for getting into law enforcement is I want to come out here and help people, because people, they need help.
Right.
And then then you teach them how to be enforcers. If when the situation calls for enforcement, they can step up and do enforcement. But if that's what's in the person's mind all the time, then they're not going to be probably the kind of policeman, at least that we wanted. And I think that's a people I see LCSO putting on the street, very qualified, very professional,
Right.
very disciplined, really.
Should people feel safe walking the beach at night?
I think they should. I do.
Should women feel safe walking the beach at night? It's easier should women also feel safe?
I think they should.
Walking alone why do you make a face? I just feel like
Well,
it's a
people.
is it an
feel
unfair
safe.
question? Am I going to
No,
be canceled now because
no.
I asked about women walking the beach?
Go ahead.
No, I would. I mean, I would feel safe because I feel like I can protect myself, and hopefully that situation never arises. But it could arise here just as easily. I mean, I was mugged. It was in town years ago. So
Mhm.
I mean, anything can happen at any time.
Right. That's just the point I was going to make.
So that was a good point, right?
It was a great point, Kim. I'm glad you got him to finally come around.
I know,
What the hell?
exactly.
Holy
He's
cow.
so stingy with that thing.
But really, I think that's what you have to take into consideration. Anything can happen anywhere, anytime. But by and large,
Right.
I would feel safe, and I think my wife would feel safe as well.
Well, last question, Jim, and I'm really disappointed your wife's not here because
I know you are.
last time
We
you were
missed
here,
you.
she was here, and now she's sitting at home, hopefully watching.
She getting ready for the next campaign?
Well, that was
Yeah,
leading into my
actually-
next question,
Oh.
Jim. I hope you'll plan to run for town council.
Well, thank you for that. But right now, my plan is to I have
Your
to run.
plate is full.
Yeah, I have to run for re-election in the 22 election because the seat that I ran for and was elected to was a partial term. So I'm gonna be running for the fire commission again in 22.
Okay.
So you'll see me around. I'll be glad to come up and chat with
Please,
you about
please.
what's
You're
going on in
always
the fire
welcome.
department and the
And-
fire district at that time.
And for everybody that doesn't know, Jim is also on the public safety committee. Obviously, with all his experience as a police officer, that's a great asset for the community to have. And when is the next meeting? Your wife says hello. She just typed in the chat box. So thank you for doing that, Ellen.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching. That's a half hour of your life you're never going to get back. But thank you very much for that. Now, when is the next meeting? Do you know when it is? I
For
know.
public safety
Yes.
committee, it's going to be on the second or third Tuesday of the month. I'd have to look my calendar,
Okay.
and I don't have that right off
No
the
doubt.
top of my head.
We'll make sure we put it out there.
Yeah.
So
But you typically are there, and you typically record those meetings.
I
and
watch and carry them live. Yeah, try to do
and,
that.
So we'll see. We'll see. Right now, we've been focusing on the lighting issue because that's been
Oh, yeah.
the current focus of the committee. And I think John Goggin, who is our chairman, I think he sent you some information. The committee itself has kind of reached a conclusion on that particular subject. We've kind of told the lighting a consultant, this is how we feel about it, and these are the issues that we think are important as a committee. And but on some of these other issues, it's still up in the air. Again, community policing, we haven't really formulated a final recommendation on that because we still want to talk to the folks from the community policing group. So
Will better lighting
thank
on
you.
Estero Boulevard deter crime?
I think it can certainly have an impact. It'll certainly improve the quality of people's feeling safe.
Yeah.
And I think it will certainly improve the safety of driving and biking and walking along the street.
And it seems like I know we're running over. It seems like we're in a battle between amber and white lights.
Some of the information I have seen is that they have amber lights that are almost as bright as the white lights. And some of but you're going to see what the committee was saying is people are people and people are important, and they should be important year round. In other words, people are not less important because it happens to be turtle season.
Right.
So whatever we do, we have to make sure that we have a solution that is safe, that it creates a safe condition for the public
Year round.
year round.
Would you agree that there's no chance that any other light other than amber will ever be put up on Estero Boulevard? There's no chance.
I'm not going to say that because I don't know the answer yet. I
Okay.
know what we're recommending, and we're not recommending either or. We're just recommending consistent lighting, bright enough to provide for the safety and security of the people using the streets and the sidewalks and the crosswalks on Estero Boulevard. And it's really going to be up to council. They're the ones that have to balance this between the Florida Wildlife Commission's
so many
standards
agencies.
Yeah.
and the Florida Department of Transportation's
And then the
standards.
county, and then the city, and then the turtle time, and all
Right.
that gets
Well, those are just outside influences,
Yeah.
that are going to influence council's decision. But I think I'm kind of glad I'm not in a position to have to make that call. Really, it's a tough
someday
call.
you
Yeah.
will, hopefully, Jim. Someday.
Well, thanks, Ed.
How about a big hand from the
Thank
home
you.
studio audience for Jim
Thank you.
Nichols? Thank you, Jim. We
Thank
appreciate you coming on, and you are welcome back anytime. Jim
Okay.
is on the
Thanks.
Public Safety Committee, and before we get to our next guest, I want to tell you real quick about our favorite bug repellent. It's an insect repellent. It's not a bug repellent because we love the big bugs. What we don't want is the little bugs. We don't want the little gnats and the things that get in your armpits or up your nose or anything like that. It's don'titchit.com. What you need to do right now is get online to don'titchit.com or islandoilsllc.com and place an order, because while you placing an order, that means that our show is successful. Our advertising is successful. Yes, we're a business, and we are asking you to make a purchase so that our business friends can be successful. IslandOilsLLC.com, don'titchit.com. By the way, if you don't know how to buy things online, you can go to Bait and Weight. You can go to Snook Hut Bait and Tackle. And for goodness sake, now those three places I've never been to because I don't get out much, but it's also available at the Lighthouse Island Resort. I have been there because they have a nice pool and a tiki bar out in the back, but you can get the product, don'titchit.com or islandoilsllc.com at all those locations, or you can buy it online. Thank you very much for being with us. And right now, our second guest for our next biggest topic. We're just rolling out all the big topics today. James Evans from the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on your show today.
I was told by the mayor of Sanibel just the other day that you are the go-to guy with a big, my boss used to say guy with a big G, little G, not to offend anybody, but you are the go-to guy for water quality and what's going on with the water situation. I saw the governor out there throwing chlorine in the lake, whatever that is, from Israel. I'll back up a little bit, but we want to make sure we get to that.
Down.
So go ahead, dear.
No, so you used to work for the Sanibel Sanibel City, correct?
Right. So I started with the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation in September of 2020. Prior to that, I worked for the city of Sanibel for over 20 years. And the past 7 years prior to joining SCCF, I was the director of natural resources for the city of Sanibel.
And what is your background educationally?
So I hold a bachelor's and a master's in environmental science. I did my graduate research here in Estero Bay, conducting research on fish larvae and the effect of freshwater inflow from all the tributaries that come into Estero Bay and how they impact the distribution and abundances of those fish larvae in the bay. And, of course, I've been working on water management issues in Southwest Florida for, 22 plus years now.
What is fish larvae?
I knew it. I knew
fish larvae. Okay, so fish go through a number of different life stages, and I was looking at the larval stages when they hatch from the eggs and turn into larvae before they get into to smaller fish and grow into bigger fish. That was what I was researching. And of course, freshwater inflows into the bay have a direct impact on their ability to grow and provide the great fishing resources we have here in Southwest Florida.
James, I asked that question specifically for the people watching at home that might not know what fish larvae is, because
Outright.
It was a great
sometimes-
question.
Oh, no. James, we have to talk about this.
1-to-1. All righty. So go ahead.
So now, what is your role with SCCF?
Yeah, so I'm the environmental policy director. So I'm responsible for, using science to create, inform, and advance environmental policies in Southwest Florida, so that we can get policies in place that protect our water quality, protect our habitat. And of course, you all know how important water quality is to the economy of Southwest Florida. So I work very closely with our elected officials, our state and federal leaders here in Southwest Florida to make sure that we're getting policies that protect both the ecology of our waters, but also our local economy.
We saw a story the other day of some fish eating bacteria or some kind of bacteria. What is it called? Flesh eating bacteria on Fort Myers Beach. What was that all about?
Yeah, so there are a number of different bacteria that exist in our waters, especially when the water temperatures warm up. One of those types of bacteria, they've deemed it as a flesh-eating bacteria. It typically comes from shellfish. And of course, if you have an open wound and you go in the water when the water temperatures are warm, you are subject to getting an infection, and that could result in this type of bacteria impacting, your health. And we certainly don't recommend anybody go in the water when they have open flesh wounds and things like that. But they do commonly occur in our waters. They're just much more abundant during the warmer temperatures.
Now,
are you worried about that?
No, I don't ever go in the water. So actually, you know what?
Don't shave your legs.
I had to put my foot in the water this morning, which was the first time I did that, because I don't know if you parked over here in the parking lot, but when I went to pay the meter this morning, I saw a bunch of flies around the meter, and I'm like, this is totally unusual. There's a bunch of flies around the meter. And I looked down, and I was standing in a pile of dog dew. So I had to put my foot in the water to clean up my shoe. It has nothing to do with the fish or the water. I probably shouldn't have cleaned my feet in the water.
Well, you're adding nutrients now.
Well, there you go. So indirectly, that does have an impact on water quality because it's a nutrient. It's nitrogen and phosphorus that goes into our waterways.
When somebody lets their dog go to the bathroom under the meter and doesn't clean it up, I just lose my sense of anything. I'm so irritated.
Yeah, it is. It is bad etiquette. But that's been going on the beach lately. So.
Yeah, let's just forget this whole week happened. But so I was watching the YouTube. Am I interrupting you? I was watching the YouTube yesterday, and I saw Brian Mast was standing out. I don't even know where he was standing out.
Was he at Pahokee?
And the water behind him was. He was like, if you touch this water, he basically said, if you touch this water, you could die. I mean, how did it get so? How is it getting so bad year after year after year, James? Why are we going through this every year?
Yeah, so it's no mystery that we have a water quality problem in Florida, and that's because of the runoff that comes from our landscapes, the runoff that comes from agricultural land uses, north of Lake Okeechobee, south of Lake Okeechobee, and of course within our own watersheds here in the Caloosahatchee. It's an 850,000 acre watershed, and about 50% of the water that we receive here in the water within the estuary comes from our own watershed. But unfortunately, over the past, century, all the land use changes, all of the ditching and draining of the entire water management system have resulted in the water getting into the lake very quickly, untreated, and a lot of that nitrogen and phosphorus has accumulated in the lake, and it's feeding these algae blooms, like the blue-green algae blooms that we're seeing in Lake Okeechobee today, as well as the blue-green algae blooms that are also thriving in the Caloosahatchee.
Should we be? I don't mean to monopolize, but go ahead.
So, given recent reports, because there's been a lot in the news lately about it, how concerned are you about the likelihood of a disastrous blue-green algae like we've seen in, was it 2018, 2016?
So if you would have asked me this question a month ago, my answer would have been much different than it is today. But because the lake has dropped over a foot in the past month, last month we were looking at lake levels more than 2 feet higher than the previous 2 years. And compared to 2018, when we had that disastrous event here in Southwest Florida, where we had red tide, and dead fish flooding our beaches, and we had blue-green algae blooms in all of the canals in Cape Coral and North Myers. The lake levels were about 3/4 of a foot higher a month ago this year compared to 2018. Today, they're actually lower. So we're about 1.4 feet lower today than we were in 2018. So we're in a much better position, and we're actually approaching the bottom end of what the Army Corps of Engineers calls their operational management band. So we're getting close to that 12.5 foot line. We're at about 12.75 foot in the lake. That's a big difference from a month ago. So that doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. We're still seeing blue-green algae blooms in the lake. just a month ago, we had 500 square miles of the lake, 730 square mile lake, which is about 70% of the lake was covered with blue-green algae blooms. Today, we're about 20%. So conditions are getting better. There's a really strong correlation between lake levels and algae blooms in the lake. So as the lake levels come down, that risk gets lower, and so does the risk to, sending that water to the estuaries.
Now, wait a minute. No.
Yeah.
Let me ask. How did it go from so bad with all the algae? Like, where did that algae go? Because was it released? Did the lake drop because of evaporation or because of releases? And if the algae was so bad, covering 500 square whatever before, where did it go now?
Those are great questions. So the biology, of these different algae species is very dynamic, and it can change very quickly. But what we do know is that a lower lake level means the algae bloom potential in the lake gets lower. So we think that as the lake has dropped, and of course wind and other factors can affect algae bloom dynamics, but a lower lake means less algae bloom potential. But the lake level drops significantly because of the need for water supply. So the water supply needs in the Everglades agricultural area drew a lot of water out of the lake. The Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District were also moving more of that water south. But also May is a very dry and hot month. So we get a lot more what's called evapotranspiration, meaning that the water evaporates from the lake, goes into the air, and moves out of the system. So the lake drops really quickly. And so fortunately, all of those things working together, plus a very dry month of May, has worked in our favor.
So we saw that Brian Mast seemed like he was the king of the water over the last few months, and that he stopped all the water from going to the West Coast.
No, to the East Coast.
Sorry, to the East Coast. And we felt like you heard some of the county board members saying we felt like we were caught off guard with the operating manual that they're writing. And now it seems like Mast and Donalds have gotten together, and Donalds has taken a lot of heat from certain groups. So kind of fill us in on where we are as far as are they going to keep releasing more water this way? Are they going to release water all south? Do we know where they're going to release the water?
Yeah, so let me address the question about the new Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule, which is called LOSM. It's the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual. And the Army Corps of Engineers is developing a new schedule that will pretty much guide how we manage the lake for the next decade. And up till, about a week ago, we were very concerned about the direction that those different the alternatives that were being developed for that lake schedule were going. Specifically, all of the alternatives would have been completely unacceptable for the Caloosahatchee because it would have transferred the water that would have gone east to the West Coast. And in our opinion, that's unacceptable. Fortunately, we've been able to work with Congressman Donalds, and he's stepped up in a big way, representing the interests of Southwest Florida to balance the needs of the coastal communities with the needs of the heartland communities. We don't want to take away water supply. We don't want to damage the ability for the Corps to provide flood control to the communities south of Lake Okeechobee or around the lake. But we need to balance it so that the Caloosahatchee isn't the relief valve for the entire water management system. And that's what we're getting today. Congressman Donalds is really been pushing back on the Army Corps of Engineers. We also have a number of local elected officials like Mayor Smith at the city of Sanibel, Commissioner Ruane, and other elected officials that have really been champions of our water quality. And we're working very closely with them to provide them with what our recommendations are. And our recommendation is to take one of the plans. There are 5 plans, and they're labeled AA, BB, CC, DD, and EE. Our recommended plan is CC, but it's a modified plan, and that plan would change where we measure the flows. Under the current plans, the Army Corps of Engineers would measure the flows in the upper bands of the schedule at the lake. That doesn't account for the water that comes from our own watershed, which can double the flows to the estuary. What we want to do is measure it at the same place that they're measuring on the East Coast in the St. Lucie at the estuary so that we can account for that watershed runoff. We also want to make sure we cap those flows at a reasonable level so that it is comparative or apples to apples comparison with the East Coast. And I think we're there. And that's what Congressman Donalds as well as Congressman Mast are supporting right now. And we're really excited that we're moving in that direction. hopefully the Corps will also support that.
Why is Congressman?
Can I just ask? Now the Schedule CC with the alternatives do the alternatives include sending water east, or is that off the table?
Yeah, so one of the alternatives sends a significant amount to the east. That's the water supply plan, but that also cuts off the Caloosahatchee during the dry season,
Right.
and then sends us a lot during the wet season when we don't want it. So that plan is really off the table for us. The other plans would reduce the amount of water that goes to the east, measured at the lake at the S308 structure, but it would also provide significant benefits to the Caloosahatchee. So it's really a win-win. But the important component of that schedule that we're pushing also pushes the most amount of water south into the Everglades. And so by getting more water south into the Everglades, it takes the pressure off the estuaries.
When you mentioned water supply before, that's sugar, right?
So it's a mixture. I mean, it's large landowners around Lake Okeechobee that depend on water. It's agricultural water supply as well as urban water supply. But when we look at the groups that are really pushing these issues the most, it's mostly the sugar, U.S. sugar and Florida crystals. But again, a lot of people try to vilify U.S. sugar and Florida crystals. But they're just looking out for their own interests, as we are. But it's critical that the Army Corps of Engineers balance all of the different parts of the systems. And that's what we're really looking for, is balance.
And when is the new plan due?
So we're going to be getting the model runs that will be finalized next week to support the different 5 alternatives. Our modelers at the city of Sanibel, as well as at Lee County, will be evaluating those very quickly and coming back with a recommendation. I know the colonel's going to be here next week, so we'll have an opportunity to talk to him about those.
Where's he going to be?
So he's going to be in Fort Myers meeting with some of the environmental groups, as well as Commissioner Ruane and some of our other elected leaders. I know Congressman Donalds has a meeting set up with him as well. And then the next step will be to finalize those before July. And I think we'll have a final plan, or what we call a tentatively selected plan in Corps speak, by July.
Are those open meetings so the public can attend with the colonel? And the colonel, for people that don't know, he's the person that runs the Army Corps of Engineers down here.
Yeah, so Colonel Kelly is the district commander for the Army Corps of Engineers. Some of these will be private meetings where we'll be getting into the technical details. But of course, we do have a lot of public meetings. One of the public meetings that we'll be having in the next couple of weeks is what's called a project delivery team meeting. And that's where the public can really weigh in and say, look, we need a balanced plan for Southwest Florida. And it can't be just scientists and advocates pushing for what we need. It's the businesses, the business community. It's our, it's our elected leaders that really need to be pushing for those plans as well.
Now, in LOSUM, that's the operating manual for Lake Okeechobee. Is there anything in there about monitoring blue-green algae or mitigating blue-green algae, or is that a completely separate situation?
So there are some different measures that are taking place as part of the modeling. We call them performance metrics.
Yep.
It's just a fancy word for things that we measure to figure out how well the system's responding. And one of them is to develop an algae bloom metric so that we can figure out what's going on. But what we do know is that a lower lake level means less algae in the lake, which means there's less algae being transferred to the estuaries. So a good practice for the Army Corps of Engineers would be to manage that level, lake level, a little lower than they have in the past, because we know that's harmful. But the state of Florida is really responsible for water quality. The Army Corps of Engineers is really responsible for public safety and managing water levels. State of Florida, the Department of Environmental Protection, is responsible for managing the sources of those nutrients going into our water bodies. And so we've been working with the DEP to make sure that we can do a better job. And it's not just, managing nutrients on agricultural lands. It's also what we do in our own backyards. Mm-hmm. The fertilizers that we put on our landscapes, our dog poop and things like that wash into our waterways. That also has an impact on nutrients.
Yeah. And wells and sewers.
Absolutely.
And septics.
So we need to do a better job, even here in Southwest Florida, of converting our communities from septic to sewer. And addressing the nutrient sources that we put in our water bodies.
And there's an email address that people that want to stay involved in this can send their thoughts to. Do you know what it is?
I don't know what it is offhand, but certainly you can go to the Army Corps of Engineers website, or we can track that down.
Somebody will know. Okay.
I posted it in response to.
Do they read those comments? You think they care, or are they people wasting their time?
They do. In fact, we were very concerned that this core process was really being driven by politics rather than science.
Really?
And I put out an op-ed a couple weeks ago, that really, put the Corps on alert that we were very concerned. And of course, there could be some legal ramifications if it's not based on the best available science. So we want to, we're going to keep a very close eye on that and make sure that they're following the science and not the politics. But of course, by people weighing in, that does, put the Corps on alert that, our communities in Southwest Florida can't be left behind.
I was reading something, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not going to mention any names, but there were some stories where I was reading where 2 sugar cane lobbyists were originally on that project development team. Did you?
Yes.
And now they've since been, I guess, removed, but.
Well, so originally the project delivery team did include representatives from, I believe they were brought on by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, government agency that represents agriculture in Florida. They were dropped off of that PDT. However, they were brought back onto the PDT, representing the communities, what we call the lakeside communities. And those are, communities like Moorhaven, Clewiston, South Bay, Pahokee. Those are all communities that are very much tied to agricultural interests. So they do need representation on the project delivery team. So, I know they get criticized a lot, but again, everybody is trying to represent all of the interests in South Florida. Everybody needs representation. So it's only fair that the agricultural communities also have representation.
Because Big Sugar's always been fair to our side of the state.
Yeah, I mean, good point. But on the other hand, we're going to fight for what we want. They're going to fight for what they want.
So let's talk about what this stuff that DeSantis was sprinkling on the mold out there and the Israeli stuff. Did he go to Israel and get a test there? And what's going on with that? What is that all about?
Yeah, so it's an algicide. It's a peroxide-based algicide that is being used to treat the symptoms of blue-green algae. It's not addressing the problem, which is the nutrients that go into the water bodies. But the state is looking at opportunities to mitigate or address the unsightly issues and smells and odors and things like that come from blue-green algae. Honestly, it'll address some of the symptoms, but it's not going to address the problem. And that really needs to be addressed by the sources.
Do we know if it works?
So, we don't know yet, but I know the state is doing, a lot of ecological and biological monitoring to make sure that it's not harmful to the organisms.
Well, that was
but the jury's still out. Our concern is that the nutrients that are released from that algae when it's treated, that they can just go downstream into the estuary and be taken up by organisms like red tide. And that's what we're concerned about. That was the same thing that happened in 2018 when the blue-green algae blooms broke down into the estuary, released those biologically available nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that were just taken up by red tide, and we saw those massive blooms in 2018.
And that was the next question on the list, is to what extent, because I've read both, I've read both, that it's not really that much, and other reports where it really is significant, has a significant influence, even though it's a different kind of algae than red tide, it does influence it to a greater extent. So in your estimation, when your experience, how much of an impact does that have?
So the blue-green algae is a freshwater species, first and foremost. So you're going to see it growing in the freshwater areas like the lake or in the river. When it gets into the estuary, the salt content in the estuary, it forces those cells to break, and then they release that nitrogen and phosphorus into the water. As that nitrogen and phosphorus moves out, the red tide can take that up. And so, our marine lab studied that back in 2018. And I think there's a lot of other scientists that have looked at this, and they think there's a strong correlation between those nutrients that were released into the coastal waters and that super bloom and the impacts that we saw in 2018.
James, did you see the video of the guy that kissed the shark in Naples and then tried to throw him over the dock and he missed?
I didn't see that one.
Good,
you
you're
didn't
lucky.
See that? It was disturbing.
It was
now,
disturbing.
He tried to throw it and he realized how heavy the shark was and he didn't get it over the dock. Is that fish abuse in some way? And should he be arrested for that?
It's actually a violation of law. I mean, people should, if you're out there fishing, you catch a shark, keep it in the water, unhook it, let it go. Our sharks are important top-level predators, and we need the sharks in the ocean. We don't need to be abusing our wildlife. Just, go out there if you're a recreational fisherman. If you want to catch sharks, that's fine, but do it in a responsible way.
What do they? You said they're top level predators. What are they taking care of for us?
Yeah, so they're taking care of a lot of the other fish that sit below them in the different trophic levels to make sure that there's no imbalance in the ecosystems. Like sharks and other top level predators, they keep all of the other organisms below them in check so that we don't have an imbalance. And that's what's so important about these different ecosystems. We don't want to remove any of the different levels within the trophic levels, or else we have an imbalance.
I know I'm getting a little off the water topic here, but you're the expert. So you remember when there was a few months back where all these manatees were dying and they couldn't figure out why? Do we ever figure that out, what it was about?
Yeah, so, of course, habitat loss in many of the estuaries, loss of seagrass and things for them to eat, are causing mass mortalities of manatees. And of course, we see accumulations of these toxins, whether it's red tide or other toxins that accumulate in these seagrass beds that can also affect manatees, as well as sea turtles and other marine organisms. So, it's really demonstrating an imbalance and the impact that pollution and things like that are having in our coastal waters.
Did you know sea turtles can swim from here to Key West at like 30 miles an hour?
Well,
It's
they
crazy.
Get caught up in the
Yeah, it's impressive.
They're so big and bulky and overweight. You never think they could
Have you
swim that
seen
fast.
one?
Up close,
They're
no.
not. They're not overweight.
When you think of turtle, you think not crossing the road fast enough. And then when they said that they can
That's not
swim
the same
30 miles an
turtle.
hour, it's like, wow, it's like a cartoon character. It would be nice to see that. It would be nice if he had a GoPro on or something. So go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask, we've been talking a lot about blue-green algae. What about the red tide situation this year? Any predictions, any ideas?
Yeah, again, a month ago, we were very concerned. We saw concentrations, in the high range, where we were seeing fish kills washing up here on Fort Myers Beach, as well as Bonita and Naples. Today, the concentrations have dropped pretty precipitously. Our concentrations are ranging between background levels to moderate concentrations, and those moderate concentrations are really down by Marco Island and up near Piney Point. So we're not really seeing a lot of high concentrations in our area like we were 2 weeks ago. So we don't know if there's any relationship between the Army Corps of Engineers cutting back some of those releases to the Caloosahatchee, but it certainly didn't hurt.
And it wasn't raining very much too. Does that mean anything, or I have no idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so dry conditions, the runoff, the lack of runoff, and then of course cutting back those releases from the estuary, essentially could be cutting back those nutrient sources that could be fueling the red tide that was blooming around Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach.
So what's your prediction for this LOSAM thing when it's finally put out? Are we going to be okay?
So that all depends if our local leaders and our representatives here at the state level and the federal level continue to be engaged and push hard for what we need here in Southwest Florida. If they don't, then it could be business as usual for the Corps, and we could end up with something just as bad as what we have today. So we need people like Congressman Donalds continuing to fight for what we need. We'll continue to support them in their efforts.
He's been spending a lot of time on the border. Is he spending enough time in Florida to help with the water?
Well, I can tell you his staff is working really hard on the water issues right now. So, I know he's working hard on the border issues as well. But I can tell you that his staff here in the district is working extremely hard on our water quality issues.
And Holly wrote an editorial that's going to be in the news press, I think, on Sunday. I think we had it yesterday in our newsletter. And I thought Kevin Ruane's head was going to blow off. He was so irritated at the last county board meeting with what he saw and what was going on. And so there's no doubt that the county is going to be talking about it at every meeting that comes up. So it seems like they're engaged.
Yeah, they're very engaged. Mayor Smith and Commissioner Ruane have really been engaged in this issue. Of course, I used to work with Commissioner Ruane when he was the mayor of Sanibel. And, he's been a leader on water quality, and Holly Smith is really a leader on water quality as well. And we also work very closely with Fort Myers Beach and the other cities, municipalities here in Lee County. But again, we need everybody engaged. We're appreciative of what they're doing. We need even more engaged.
So for people to get engaged, I think that's the thing, because it is confusing unless, you have a lot of time to devote to learning all of it. But I think the point, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The point is that right now, the feeling is that CC with the modifications is the best for this area, so that people could write to Congressman Donalds. They could write to the Army Corps of Engineers. They could write to their local politicians about supporting that plan at least, and keeping the pressure on to get what we need done.
Yes, that's exactly what we need. We need people reaching out to Congressman Donalds, picking up the phone, calling his office in DC and letting them know, look, this is what we need for Southwest Florida. Call the Colonel at the Army Corps of Engineers, Colonel Kelly. Send letters to the Corps and send letters to the South Florida Water Management District. They're going to be having a workshop at the end of the month where they're going to be endorsing a plan, or at least considering what parts of each plan they support. So, reach out to Chauncey Goss, the chairman of the governing board, and let him know this is what we need for Southwest Florida.
I'm pretty sure he's on top of it too, right? I mean, he's very involved in that. So,
and I also need to, just give a shout out to Charlotte Roman from, our other representative down in Marco Island. She's a governing board representative with the Water Management District. She's been doing a fantastic job representing Southwest Florida. So, of course, anybody down in Naples or Marco, in Fort Myers, reach out to Charlotte and let her know, what we need for LOSUM. What's
going on at SCCF that you can tell us about?
Well, of course, SCCF is a great organization. We were founded in 1967, and our mission is to care and protect and care for Southwest Florida's coastal ecosystems. And we have a great marine lab doing a lot of great research on our coastal ecosystems, harmful algal blooms like red tide and blue-green algae. And we have a lot of folks out there, biologists monitoring our sea turtles and shorebirds and other organisms. So there's a lot going on. There's no shortage of work to do, and we have a great policy team. We just hired a modeler, a hydrological modeler this year to keep that policy emphasis, so we can use policy to inform. I wish I would have
known you were hiring for that. I would have applied for that.
If you're looking for a job, we're always looking for great scientists. So,
so how are the turtles doing over there? How's the nesting
They're doing
season?
good. Of course, the numbers aren't as high as they were last year. Is the last time I checked. Kelly Sloan, our research, our sea turtle researcher at SCCF, has been doing a lot of work with our volunteers. But we're off to a pretty good start. But we have peaks and valleys. But we're doing pretty good.
All righty. Any other questions for
anything
James?
else you would? I do, but I'm going to ask them off camera.
Oh, right.
Is there anything else you want to get out to the people?
Yeah, I just think it's important to remind the audience that 2018 was devastating to the community of Fort Myers Beach in Southwest Florida. On Sanibel, I can tell you we had an economic impact of about $47 million from the red tide blooms and blue-green algae that came down the Caloosahatchee. Of course, it cost us about $1.6 million to remove about 850,000 pounds of dead marine life from our beaches.
Wow.
So those statistics, really hit our communities hard. And, it's important that we continue to move forward with something that's much better than what we have today. So, get out there and contact the Army Corps of Engineers and your local officials and tell them what we need for Southwest Florida.
And if we can find out about those meetings next week, and if they're public, we'll try to do our best to carry them for everybody. So, James, thanks so much. We appreciate you coming all the way over to Fort Myers Beach to be on our show and say hello to everybody at SCCF for us. We love the organization. They're always great to us, and they always come on every time we ask.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So
James
much.
Evans, everybody from SCCF. A big round of applause from our audience at home. And before we wrap things up, we got a couple things. Oh, we have movie trivia coming up, folks. So don't go anywhere yet. I also, I'll take care of this there. I want to tell you about our great friends at Beach Pottery. Not only do they sell pots, they have cameras in which they can take care of taking pictures for crazy cars and trucks that run off the side of the road. Alana and her team at Beach Pottery have pots, and more pots. Over an acre of pottery and art out in the back, and there's always something new there. They also have a coffee, wine, and beer area where you can go and have coffee, wine, and beer in that area. But
all in that order?
All in that order or area. They have over 8,000 pots imported from Vietnam and Mexico. A new line of all-weather outdoor furniture. And the chainsaw guy in the back, where he's chainsawing things that you want to put out in your front yard or backyard. The artwork, it's very, very nice, very cool. So check them out. Go by and see them. They're on San Carlos Boulevard, right before the hairpin curve, where you might find your vehicle in the drink if you're driving like a crazy maniac. Or you can call them and say, what do you have? Do you have the pots that Ed was talking about from Vietnam? Because I don't want that China stuff. I don't want the China virus stuff. I want the pots from Vietnam.
Or Mexico.
437-4211. All right, everybody, it's time for 2 tickets to the Beach Theater, and we have a trivia question. And of
I
course,
kind of wanted to win this because I want to go see Cruella.
Cruella.
Yeah.
Is that like a Dracula kind of thing?
Oh,
Cruella?
Cruella DeVille from the 101 Dalmatians. It's a take on
Alrighty.
that. Okay.
All righty. So the first person to correctly answer our trivia question is going to win 2 tickets to the Beach Theater, which is on Estero
I
Boulevard.
don't want to look at the answer.
I mean, what's not on Estero Boulevard? So
All right, go ahead. Read
the Beach
it.
Theater is America's original first-run food theater and opened in 1999. In 1999, Billy Crystal, who stars in this week's comedy drama
Really?
Here Today, starred in what critically acclaimed movie starring Robert De Niro?
Read that again.
Okay, so you're going back to 1999 for
Okay.
a film with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal. Name that movie, and all you need to do is type it in to the chat box if you're listening on the Facebook. Now, if you're listening on audio, you'll be late to the party and you won't be able to
De
type it in.
Niro?
Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal
Billy
in 1999. So the first person to answer that
Wow.
correctly. So I'm going to read it one more time before we wrap up with our final issue, which is to give everyone an update on why we're inside. The Beach Theater is America's original first-run food theater, and it opened in 1999. Now people are Googling it now. Like last week, we had a winner that was snap right on top
Right.
of it. But right now, you people are cheating because you didn't know, and you should admit that you're a cheater and you didn't know. Billy Crystal, who stars in this week's comedy drama Here Today, starred in what movie with Robert De Niro? Billy Crystal and Robert De Niro. All right, so if you get that right, type it
I
in
got
there.
nothing.
Flawless is not right, Tim, but it was a good guess. I guess I've never heard of that one either. So I'm reading the book about the Leavenworth prison. What's the name of the Leavenworth prison? I've completely drawn a blank
Leavenworth?
right now. Oh crap! I don't even know why I brought that up. So I saw you looking outside earlier. Analyze this is right, Susie.
Oh,
Very
that's
nice.
right.
Analyze this.
That's right. Good for you.
Susie. She cheated. Oh, she cheated. All right, you get to win anyway, Susie. Very nice. So we'll check. We'll check in with you. Don't forget to send me a message or something, or I'll forget.
Okay.
So you were looking outside earlier. Were they taking pictures of us? I saw you looking out there. Was he taking pictures of us?
I couldn't
Answer
really
the
see
question.
that far. No, I
you
couldn't.
were waving.
I just was waving in case because
You
every
thought he
time
was taking a picture.
every time somebody's taking pictures, I'm never looking up, and I don't want to be
Yeah,
rude.
but he had a code enforcement shirt on. Was he taking our picture?
I couldn't tell.
You're going to tell me later. So the reason why we came inside this week was one of the reasons why, because first thing is that they sent the warning FedEx. I actually asked for the violation out front. Just hand me the violation. Well, they didn't give me the violation because I want to know when we get the violation. I'm going to make this quick because I don't want to drag people down. I wanted them to hand me the violation so that I knew what we were violating. So what they did was they mailed a warning, and the warning.
Well, I do think that that's probably the procedure.
Well, if
is
you
it's
hand
a
it to me,
warning.
then I'm
no,
served.
No, I know, but I think it's a warning and then the
whatever.
thing.
Just
But go
skip the
ahead.
warning. So the first
Well,
thing
you
they
can't
did
do
was
that.
they FedExed it
Okay.
instead of handing it to me. So they wasted your money that way. And then the next day I got a certified letter. The same thing. It was the same exact letter. So I got
Well-
two of the same letters.
But you got to make sure that it.
The FedEx
that you
person
can't
said, "Are you
say."
Ed?" I said, "Yes, I was expecting this." And so they signed in that I don't.
right.
I would have took a selfie with her if she wanted to prove to Billy that I actually got the warning. So the warning
Don't
says
be disrespectful.
the town hereby notifies you that the ongoing weekly activity. Weekly activity. Well, we're not weekly. We're not outside this week. So I guess that means they have to warn us again if we go outside, inside, outside, inside.
I don't think
it's
so.
bi-weekly. So that means we're not violating this warning, right?
Okay.
So part of the reason that we came inside too was because that you were complaining that I was giving you skin cancer from being out in the sun. So we're going to get it. We are going back out next week, folks. So it's not like we're giving up. I don't want you to think we're giving up because we're inside. And I don't want to make any of the guests feel uncomfortable. If there's any feeling of uncomfortableness by any of the guests, because I have this issue with Billy and Roger, then I don't want them to
then we'll
get
come
involved
inside
in it. Then we'll come inside because
your
we have that
issue
option.
does not trump the content of the show.
Right. We don't
But
want
I
to
don't
lose
want to be
guests.
too mean to
We
you
don't-
because I've been criticized of that.
Oh,
I've been
whatever.
accused of it.
So we want to make sure the guests still come on the show. We don't want to lose guests because of my battle. So what they say now is that we need a special events permit And the special events permit is the same permit that the folks that do the shrimp festival have to get. If you're doing a parade, you have to get. If you're
I think
in
if
a
you're
circus,
having a wedding,
if you're
having a wedding on the
if you're
beach?
having an event where there are like millions and millions of people that show up, that's what the town is now saying that we have to do. So we'll continue on the fight. The other thing before I let you go, dear, is that I did call and talk to the ATV station yesterday, and I said, do you have to get a special events permit every time you go out there and you do live shots from Times Square? He basically laughed in my face because he knows it's a First Amendment thing. They would never be asked that. They've never been asked that, and they continue to come out, and they were out in force on Memorial Day. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on that. So we'll keep fighting the fight until you guys get crazy and tell me to stop because I'm annoying you with it. But we thank you for tuning in. We want to thank James Evans from SDCF.
So if you're annoying me about something not related to this, and the people speak, will you stop doing it?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Like,
well,
give me an example of what am I annoying you about? I didn't. Today was so
Sometimes
serious.
the music is too loud at our house.
Oh, come on. We're talking about on the show.
You
We're
get
talking
up
about the
really
show.
early in the morning, and then you drop a whole case of soda on the floor at 4 a.m. So I'm.
Oh, here we go. Are we making lists
So,
for each other? Is that what
I
we're
got
doing?
lists. I got a list on my arm's length.
Don't forget, you can go to supportbtr.com. If you thought our show brought you any value today, which I doubt it did, but you know,
Value
we
for
had
value.
some fun. We had some fun. We had great
I
guests
doubt
today.
we brought any value,
That's
but the
right.
guests
That's
brought
right.
a ton.
The show lacked humor today, that's for sure.
I know, but it's serious stuff.
I
It's
kept it
serious
totally
stuff.
serious. I didn't tell any
Mhm.
jokes. I didn't give any stabs. But thanks to Jim Nickel, hopefully the future town council member, and to James Evans. You want to talk about
Yeah.
serious? He's serious about the water.
Yep.
And so I know you're rushing me out of here. Thank you all. You have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.